Hello, friends. Welcome to another interesting session on accounting ratios part 2. In today's session, we will be moving forward and learning a different accounting ratio. Now, today's accounting ratio that we are going to learn is operating ratio and operating profit ratio. So, first, we will take up a question which has us to calculate operating ratio. So the question is, revenue from operations has been given as 6,80,000, rate of gross profit on cost is 25%, selling expense is 1,44,000 and administrative expense 73,000. Now here we are supposed to calculate the operating ratio. Now when we look at the information, we have been given revenue from operations, but have a look here. They have given the rate of gross profit, but it is on cost. So you cannot directly apply 25% on revenue from operation. It is 25% on the cost of revenue from operations. So be careful while reading the question. This is the tricky part where you can go wrong. So let's go and start the question solving. Now before we start solving the question, let us recall all those formulas that we will have to be aware for solving this question. So the first formula is we are supposed to calculate the operating ratio. So the formula is cost of revenue from operations plus operating expenses divided by revenue from operations. Next formula that you need to know is the gross profit ratio. Now the gross profit ratio has been given, but as you have observed there, it was given on cost. So we cannot apply direct that 25% on the revenue from operations. So you need to know this particular formula, that when you apply the gross profit ratio on revenue from operation, when the gross profit percentage is given on cost, the formula will be revenue from operations into rate by 100 plus rate. So remember this formula, then you will be able to apply that ratio on the revenue from operations. It will not be 25 by 100, but it would be 25 by 125. So these are the two important formulas that you have to recall. Then further you need to know that to arrive at cost of revenue from operations, the formula is from the revenue from operations, you have to remove the gross profit, you will get the cost of revenue from operations, and operating expenses are, as per the example given, it is those selling and administrative expenses which are required for the operation purpose. So let's start solving the question. Now here if you see, first thing that we will calculate would be the gross profit. As I told you, you will be applying on the revenue from operations the 25%, but it is going to be rate by 100 plus rate that would be applied. So the gross profit in this case is going to be the given amount of revenue from operation of 6,80,000 into, we have the rate given as 25%, so 25 by 125. So you will get the amount of gross profit as 1,36,000. So this is the amount of gross profit. Now once you've got the gross profit, we already have revenue from operations as 6,80,000. Now we have got the gross profit. So we'll be able to calculate cost of revenue from operations using the formula of revenue from operations minus gross profit. So let us substitute the amount 6,80,000 of revenue from operations. From that we remove off 1,36,000. So the cost of revenue from operations comes to 5,44,000. So we have got the cost of revenue from operations, which is required for calculating the operating ratio. The other thing that is required is the operating expense. So operating expenses, when we look at the question, what were the two expenses given? One was the selling expense, the other was the administrative expense. So these are the two expenses which have to be clubbed together. So that comes to 1,44,000 of selling expenses and 73,000 of administrative expenses. So that comes to 2,17,000. Now in that formula of operating ratio, let us substitute the amounts. What was the formula, recall? It was cost of revenue from operations, which is 5,44,000, plus operating expenses, 2,17,000, divided by revenue from operations, which is 6,80,000. So into 100. So when you calculate, you get it in points like 111.93 or 91. So now we will write it as 112% by rounding off. So this is the amount that is the operating ratio of this company. So this is how you go step by step and solve this question. So I hope the operating ratio part is clear. Let's move on and you go to the next ratio. Now the next question that I'm going to solve with you is related to the topic of operating profit ratio. Now whenever you read a question, please read carefully whether they are asking for operating ratio or operating profit ratio. Operating ratio is from the cost perspective, operating profit ratio is from the profit perspective. So let's read the question first. Opening stock has been given as 10,000. Total purchase is 1,20,000. Revenue from operations 4,00,000 gross. Why gross? Gross means this here you have not subtracted the returns. The sales return has not been subtracted from it. Then purchase returns 5,000. Returns from revenue from operations 1,50,000. So we will be subtracting that 15,000 from the revenue from operations to get the net revenue from operations. Then there is selling expenses 70 and administrative expense 40. These are the operating expenses and this closing stock of 60,000. So in this question we will have to recall certain formulas. So let's first recall the formulas. So let's go. The first formula that you need to know is the operating profit ratio formula. It is nothing but operating profit by revenue from operations into 100. Now, further, you need to know certain items like how to calculate the cost of revenue from operations. The formula is, in this case, we have the details of opening stock, purchases, closing stock. So, we would be taking the opening stock, adding the purchases net, that is net of returns minus closing stock. So why are we finding out the cost of revenue from operations? Because we have to find out the operating profit. So there we are going to use this cost of revenue from operations. Then further you need to know how to calculate the gross profit. It is nothing but the net revenue from operations, that is from the revenue from operations you have subtracted the returns from revenue from operations. From that whatever you have calculated cost of revenue from operation has to be subtracted to arrive at gross profit. But it doesn't stop there. You also need to know that we need the operating profit and we have just arrived at the gross profit. So you need to know the operating profit, how to arrive at is from the gross profit, remove off the operating expenses given the question. So these four formulas, please learn thoroughly. If you know these formulas, solving is very simple. So let's solve the question now. So first thing that we will start with is, we will start with calculating the net revenue from operations, which is nothing but the revenue from operations minus the returns related to revenue from operations. So what was the revenue from operations? It was 4,00,000 rupees and the return associated with it was 15,000. So therefore the net revenue from operation is 3,85,000. Got that? Now we go ahead, we'll find out the cost of revenue from operations. So what was the formula for that? We have the opening stock, we have the purchases, and if you have observed, there was returns related to purchase. So returns on purchases has to be subtracted from the purchases and then we subtract the closing stock. So let's fill in those details. Opening stock was 10,000. Purchases 1,20,000 and the returns on purchase were 5,000 and there is a closing stock of 60,000. So what is the amount? 1,30,000 minus 65. So it is 65,000 is your cost of revenue from operations. Now we have the net revenue from operations and cost of revenue from operations. So next what we are going to calculate? The gross profit. The formula being net revenue from operations minus cost of revenue from operations. So we have both the amounts, 3,85,000 minus 65,000. So that yields us 3,20,000. So we have got the gross profit. But we are here to calculate the operating profit. So the next formula is to find out the operating profit. We subtract from the gross profit the operating expenses given to us. So gross profit just now we arrived at 3,20,000. Now looking at the question, we find that there are two expenses on account of operating expense. One is a selling expense of 70,000 and 40,000 of administrative expenses. So 1,10,000. So 3,20,000 minus 1,10,000 would yield us 2,10,000. So this way we got the operating profit. So now we have the operating profit. We have the revenue from operations, that is the net. So these two amounts were what were required for calculating the operating profit ratio. So write that formula. Always write the formula and then fill in those amounts. So even in case some calculation error occurs, you will be getting for the formula written correctly some marks. So operating profit ratio is equal to the operating profit divided by net revenue from operations into 100. So operating profit is 2,10,000 divided by net revenue from operation is 3,85,000 into 100. So you calculate it. So you find that the percentage, you represent as percentage, it comes to 54.55. So this is how when you do systematically, as you read the question, grab the data, then think about what are formulas to be used, recall them, and then start calculating them in a systematic manner, and the question would be solved in no time. So this is how you calculate operating profit ratio. So in today's session, we have been able to completely understand the operating ratio and operating profit ratio. So I hope it was useful to you. Thank you for joining me today. Let's meet again for the next part.